Barclay, and welcome to the Rabbi's Table, a place of dialogue, not debate, a place where we can disagree without being disagreeable, a place like any good dinner table where we can have honest discussion, hopefully learn from each other, entertain each other, smile, have our hearts opened, and have a really good, creative, wonderful space. Today is really special for me personally. I've recently gotten back from Israel, and this is the first show I'm getting to tape since I've been back from the Holy Land. And we have two holy guests who are joining us at the table today. I guess the book they wrote describes them. It's The Surfer and the Sage. Shaun Tomson was at one point in time the world's greatest surfer and has transcended his surfing and made it into much, much more, and used surfing as an analogy to help people heal and strengthen, manifest their dreams, and become more of who they are. Noah Benshea is the author of a life-changing book. I must have given 30 copies of this book out over the last few decades, called Jacob the Baker, Gentle Wisdom for a Complicated World. It's a book that changes lives, and what Noah has been doing for his life has been changing others. Again, helping them to heal, helping all of us to heal, to manifest in our lives who we are, helping us to become the best versions of ourselves, which is what you really want out of friends and out of teachers. You know, the Talmud says you should make of yourself a teacher, acquire of yourself a friend, and our friends are and our teachers are the best people. It is such a blessing for them to be here. And so I really want to invite you to relax, sit back, have a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, a glass of kombucha, a pastry, a dessert, anything that you want, to come join here at the Rabbi's Table with Shaun Tomson and Noah Benshea, the surfer and the sage, here at the Rabbi's Table. I've been blessed to travel all over the world. I have to be honest. One of my favorite places to go, especially with my family, is up to Reno, and specifically up to the Atlantis Resort up in Reno. It is beautiful. It's an amazing hotel, amazing restaurants. Reno's this fabulous little city. It really is the biggest little city in the world. You can go in the spring or the summer to Lake Tahoe. You can ski in the winter. Everything is up there. And I want to recommend that you go to Atlantis Casino and Resort. Go atlantiscasino.com, ATLANTIS, casino.com. Make your reservation. Spend a couple of days or a week up there. I promise you'll be happy about it. I know that I always am whenever we go up. So welcome to the Rabbi's Table, and this is also a really unique episode. Typically, when I have any guest here at the table, I've got pages of notes and hopefully going to kind of move the interview, so to speak, in a certain way. That's not the case today. We have two amazing men, and I think that the magic that can only happen in an organic, purely organic dialogue between three souls and all of you, and sharing who we are with each other. And so we're very blessed. We have Shaun Tomson and Noah Benshea. And so, gentlemen, you guys already know each other well, but let's just start a little bit brief introduction of yourselves to everyone else, because not everyone is as blessed to know who you are and what you've done, and just even touch your neshama in your soul as I've been. So, Noah, Shaun, let's start with you. If you can just, besides being the world's greatest surfer and just an amazing man, if you can maybe tell a little bit about yourself, that would really be helpful, I think, to people.
Sure. I grew up in Durban, South Africa. I grew up right on the beach, and I became a world surfing champion. In 1977, I won 19 major pro events. I was the youngest to win. I was the oldest to win. Helped create professional surfing from a dream into a multi-billion-dollar industry, helped create the surfing industry. And then I got involved in the apparel business. I had a successful apparel brand. We sold in 13 countries. And then after I retired from professional surfing, I sold my brand. My wife and I moved over here to the United States, started another brand, sold it to a publicly traded company. And shortly after the sale, when I had my first book at the print, I lost my beautiful son, Matthew. To a poor choice, and I just turned my life into a different direction. So now I speak at the largest corporations, schools, universities, religious groups. I work with the best universities like Harvard and USC and UCLA, and I talk about purpose, how to find purpose, find your power, and find your path. So that's been what I've been doing with the latter half of my life. I love it. I love showing what Judaism has taught me about life from a spiritual perspective, I went to Israel shortly after October 7th to show support and hope and purpose. And I'm very connected with Judaism, perhaps in a very non-traditional way. And then a few years back, I met Noah. We wrote a great, wonderful book together that's helped many people called The Surfer and the Sage.
And that brings us to you, Noah, and uh, this you are the surfer and the sage. You're actually both. Noah, you're certainly a sage. I don't know if you surf as well, but for those who aren't familiar with your work, and who should be, can you share just a couple of minutes about your what you do, who you are, and your work that you're doing in this world?
Well, it's said that the two great days in a man's life are the day you're born and the day you know why you were born. I was born to be a source of strength to others. That's been the work in my life. The manifestation of that effort has been after I come from very humble experience in Toronto. Um, Doing well academically, intellectually was my rocket ship out. I was the valedictorian of my class at UCLA. I was a dean at UCLA when I was 22. I taught at all the major universities by the time I was 30. I've been a fellow at 30 major think tanks. I'm the author of 30 books translated into 18 languages. Been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for a column I wrote for the New York Times. And my book, Jacob the Baker, which has much changed me as it has touched a lot of lives. When people ask me, are you and Jacob the Baker the same? I say we are, except I'm the one with character flaws. Jacob's a better man than me. And 3 or 4 years ago, Jacob the Baker was made into a major motion picture and now streaming on Amazon Prime and Yahoo around the world. And much to my surprise, the director put me very centerpiece in the film, which may seem flattering, except after at this chronological crossroads, seeing yourself on a big screen may not be quite as flattering as you might suspect or what you might endeavor when you're much younger. Um, I'm honored to have this work in my life to be a source of strength to others. Um, I'm trying to do that in every way, in every language. And I get up in the morning, I light some candles, sit in a chair, leather chair that's encased with my figure already in it, begin thinking and begin writing. And I write every day, trying to connect with people around the world and maybe reminding myself of why I was here, maybe make a difference in the lives of others.
And you do, you both do. Um, Certainly, both have made a difference in my life. And as I've told you, I read the book. I don't know how many decades ago it came out. When did Jacob the Baker actually come out? The first edition.
1989.
So that's a while ago. And
Yeah, it seems that way. It came out. That's 25 years and 10 years. That's 35 years, 36 years, and with writing, close to 40 years. So if you can become a doctor in 4 years, and this was written over 40 years. But I want to
it's been
just
around.
speak to my friend who's on the screen here with us or in this conversation, because I was reminding when Shaun and I came together, what we realized is that we were brought together, and we were being brought together. It was the notion of the you know the that one and one is three. And so I'm deeply honored to be here with Shaun. I'm a better man for having Shaun's company in my life.
And that's the word blessing comes from in Hebrew. Baruch comes from Barak to knee, the knee to kneel, to humble ourselves. And you both are humble in about who you are, and you both are tzaddikim. You're both righteous men. And Shaun, you mentioned not only the tragedy in your life, and not only your success, both in clothing and in surfing, obviously, but you also came up with a concept that I think would be a really good way to kind of transition from this segment. You came up with a concept called the Surfer's Code. You developed that into a book called The Code, which is so powerful. I've given to my sons who are, as you know, competitive athletes. It's something that people should have for business, for life, I think it's, and in some ways, the code is actually a mirror of Jacob the Baker, just in a different way, at least as an audience to both of them. Shaun, can you just for a moment discuss, for literally 90 seconds, discuss the code?
Sure, the code's about self-affirmation. It's about hope, faith, and purpose. It started when we had a big environmental problem at Rincon, a very famous surfing break. We needed to raise $8 million. And the guy who was involved in the environmental movement said, Shaun, I've got $100 to help you with a budget. And I said, how can I solve an $8 million problem with $100? So I wrote, we brought a group of about 80 kids down to the beach. So I wrote 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. I wrote it in 15 minutes. And this was a summation of the values and principles that surfing had taught me about life. And I made them into a little card, like a credit card, gave them to the kids. It created a groundswell. And I wrote my first book around it called Surface Code, which was 12 simple lessons for riding through life, 12 chapters. And then when the book was at the print, I lost my beautiful boy. And it was a number of months. I didn't want the book to be published. And then I thought, now I've got to bring out the book in honor of my son. And the book came out, it became popular. I was very stoked. The LA Times called it their favorite book of the year. And then one day I was sitting in the water. I'd started surfing again after my last number of months. And a guy paddled up to me. He said, Shaun, I would love you to come and talk to my students at the local high school about your book, about Surface Code. So we only have 80 students. So I went down, and while I was chatting to these students with a copy of the book, I said, Surface Code's my code. I wrote it. These are my values. This is my ethos, my character, my telos, my purpose. Why don't all of you write your own code? 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. Write it in 15 minutes. And about a week later, I got the codes back from the children, 80 kids, 12 lines, 960 lines of code. And the very first line of code I got back from a young girl was, I will be myself.
Now, maybe that's the place, I think.
This is a line that has come from the girl through God, without a doubt, because for me, these were words that I needed to hear, because I lost my son. He played a dangerous game at school. They called it the choking game.
Shaun, and we will come back to the story of your son in just a moment after we have this hard break to understand the code, how it's strengthening wisdom, how it's strong and gentle, just like Jacob the Baker, and how they actually sync together. We'll be right back here at the Rabbi's Table. The Jewish high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are just around the corner in mid-September, and everyone should have a place that they can go to, a community they can go to, a place to pray and be present for these important days. And so I want to invite you to come join myself, my cantors, Benny Lipson and David McGarry, our musical director, Matt Gurman, our entire Temple Ner Simcha community. Come join us for the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You can go register for tickets at therabbistable.com. You can register to be there live, or if you're watching this, or you're out of town and listening to this, you can go online as well and participate in the services. There's no mandatory cost, but registration is mandatory, so we can keep security and everyone safe at these high holiday services. So come join me at Temple Ner Simcha. Come join me for these beautiful high holidays of Rosh Hashanah, of Yom Kippur. Welcome in this new year with joy, health, passion, and peace. Shana Tova U'Metaka. May it be a joyous and healthy new year. I hope to see you at Rosh Hashanah. So we're here at the Rabbi's Table, like any dinner table, and hearing the story. Shaun, you're relaying the story of how you took the Surfer's Code and Baruch Dayanim at the death of your son, and there are no words for that, and working with children and this concept of I will. Can you tell a little bit? We were in the middle of the story. If you
when I read that first line of code from this young girl who was about 14 years old at the time, and she wrote those words, I will be myself, I went, wow. These words to me were words of power, absolute unequivocal power. This girl wasn't going to be pushed around. She wasn't going to be bullied. She wasn't going to be victimized. She wasn't going to be a victim of peer pressure. She was putting her flag in the sand and going, I will be myself. So I got so inspired by the words of this young girl in the context of what had happened to me with my son, because he played this dangerous game at school. They called it the choking game. All the kids wore school ties and they played this terrible game. So this young girl was so positive and powerful. And the other young people wrote these amazing words. I will pray. I will have faith. I will do what I say I will do. I went, wow, this is incredible. It needs to have a wider audience. So I wrote another book which was a framework for positive decision making, which was called the Code, the power of I will, because those two simple words are words of absolute unequivocal power. And now I get hundreds of thousands of people around the world to write their own codes, sometimes from the biggest corporations in the world, sometimes prisons, sometimes rehab clinics, SEAL teams, and then the largest corporations in the world. And everyone writes the code, and then they share their code. They share it with each other, whether they stand up and read the code to one another or else they, it's a wonderful thing to do for a family, but it has incredible power. We just did a white paper on it, 1,800 data points, and the results were like mind-blowing of how just the simple act of writing 12 lines, every line beginning with I will, and then sharing it can connect people in this broken, disengaged, turbulent, hateful, unkind world. How this can create an immediate transformational shift in your mind state in how you think about life. So I've been on this journey since I lost my boy in 2006, and you know, his loss and his words have given me such great power to continue on a healing path.
It's an amazing story, and you know, Shaun, and we met after the fires that were here in Southern California, you and I, and I know that you do bring healing, and the idea of taking surfing and making the analogy, I remember, I think one of your things is I always commit fully to the wave or something like that. The idea of fully, I will never paddle in, I will always, surf in. The idea of being passionate and alive, which we are missing in this culture so much. It's fabulous. And which was your favorite one of the 12 statements in the original Surfer's Code? I'm curious.
So my favorite statement is I will always paddle back out. So check this out. So I have this little band that I give to everyone. This is called the Power Band, okay? It's got Surfer's Code on the one side. It has I will equals power on the other. And then on the inside, it has I will always paddle back out. So I call this a Power Band. P for purpose, O for optimism, W for willpower, E for empathy and engagement, and R for resilience. So this band is colored orange for a reason, because orange is the color of hope. Orange is the color of sunrise. So, when I speak to people and I ask them right at the beginning of my talk, I ask them, text me a word that describes how you're feeling. And I started in COVID, and the words have been stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. I call it a sad mind state. You tell some stories, people write the code, they share the code. And then I ask people, text me a word you're taking home with you. The words are hope and purpose. So Noah and I do the same thing, a little bit differently, but we give hope and we give purpose through
And
the
so
code.
let's talk about
this
that.
is my mission.
So let's talk about that for a second. So Noah, just to put in perspective, when people ask me to describe your book, I've always said there's this guy Jacob. He writes notes while the oven's
Would you like me?
warming up.
Would you like me to encapsulate?
Do you have like a 30-second version? Fabulous.
Can you imagine after 40 years that I might have such?
No, you're Jewish, so I think we always come up with longer versions. But yes, let's.
I'm from a blue collar family, and you could be articulate, but if you were long winded, you'd get a fork in the wrist. So let me give you 30 seconds or less. Jacob is a poor but pious baker who lives an anonymous life in a timeless world. While he's waiting for the oven to come to temperature in the morning, he writes notes to himself, trying to make sense of life to himself. Unknown to Jacob, one of his notes falls in the mixer. The dough in the mixer gets made into bread. A woman purchases the bread, comes upon the note, is incredibly moved by how it speaks to her, and runs to the bakery to see how this could possibly happen. There she meets Jacob the baker and is amazed to find this rather incredible guy who doesn't seek to have any attention brought to him, but she persists, and the word comes out and rides the wind, and soon everybody in the village comes to talk with Jacob with questions about prayer and hope and friendship, and the children sit after school on the flour sacks and talk to him, and soon the world discovers Jacob the baker, and his life changes forever.
See, that's kind of how I describe it. Only that it's also a book of quarter-page to 3 or 4 page parables that remind us of who we are and who we're supposed to be. in our own souls.
I just, if I might for a second, I want honoring my friend Shaun and what he was saying, and about the role of character and how it plays is my again, I'm introduced as a poet philosopher, so I speak with some economy. Uh, Certainly, I speak with economy when my wife is with me and kicks me under the table and tells me I've been speaking too long. But on character, I'd say that most of us in our life don't lack for the information we need. We lack for the character to act on the information at hand. And when you were talking earlier about the power of passion, one has to be cautious because I wrote a line once that you better like your strengths because you're going to pay for them. Passion will allow you to build cathedrals, and passion will also burn cathedrals to the ground. So all of these have two faces that you have to watch and look at in the process. I think that Jacob the baker connects with people, albeit the kind people who have talked about the sagacity in the stories, but I think it is the compassion in Jacob that makes a difference. I think that if you want to be convincing with someone, let them know less your argument and more your caring.
People will always remember, they won't remember what you say or did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. Jacob was a baker.
Yeah.
Shaun, is Jacob a surfer in his free time?
Sorry, what was it? Repeat that, Rabbi?
Is Jacob a surfer in his free time? When the people
You know-
weren't asking him questions, does he go out and surf? What do you think?
I think perhaps in his mind, one of the lines in the Surface Code is, "I will catch a wave every day, even in my mind." And there's so many similarities between what I do with Surface Code and what Noah has done with Jacob. It's about the power of words. And I've found that the words of great leaders certainly inspire us, but it's our own words that really transform us. When people do this little exercise, it's so empowering because people look into the future. They look through that window and they write down the best version of themselves. And when Noah and I decided to write this book together, so The Surfer and the Sage, we chatted together and I said, "Hey Noah, let's get a sacred number, and let's write the number of chapters." I said, "What is it?" He said, "Chai, 18." So it's got 18 chapters. Okay, so every single.
Just I'm going to interject for a moment. Chai is 18. It literally means living, not just life.
Wow.
So we've got about
Living.
180 seconds too, and not even that. So let's see. We had 18 chapters.
18 chapters, and every chapter is a duality. And Noah just spoke about duality of passion. The duality of passion and strength. So despair and hope, powerlessness and empowered. Every chapter is a journey, and every chapter is a separate segment. The book doesn't have to be read in chronological order. It was like Noah said to me, "Shaun, let's write a book together." And I said, "Okay, we'll call it The Surfer and the Sage." And he said, "A Guide to Survive and Ride Life's Waves." That's how quickly we put it together. Noah said, "Let's do it." Kaboom. It happened. And it happened in such an organic, spiritual, and soulful way. So every chapter is like this journey from the darkness to the light.
It's easy at moments in your life for you to think that what's unfolding is a coincidence. But surely when Shaun and I met, I was reminded of Einstein, always a good reminder, who said that coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. And my hand on that is that in your life, when you feel you're in a coincidence, watch for God's fingerprints all over the moment.
Absolutely.
It's so good.
I'm so with you there, because after I lost my boy, I lost all my faith in God. I said, "How can you do this to me? I'm a good person. I've been trying to be good my whole life. How can you do this to me?" And 2 hours before I lost my boy, he read me this essay. He was in South Africa doing a semester at my old school. He read me this beautiful essay he wrote about surfing, about tube riding. And in the essay, he wrote these words: "The light shines ahead."
And that's what, and Shaun, I think we're going to come back to the light shining ahead and coming back to Jacob the surfer, and the surfer and the sage. And I have a question for you both to think about while we're on this break as well. Do we need tragedy to get to wisdom? Something to think about, because you both have experienced that in different ways. And yet Robert Bly said, let us not, just because there are beautiful cherry blossoms after the blight, let us not credit the blight for the cherries. We're going to be right back. Think about that concept as we come back in a moment to the rabbi's table with the surfer and the sage in just a couple of moments. So welcome back to the rabbi's table, but this is the podcast section. This is my favorite section because we're not on a clock and it's much more organic. So Noah, Shaun, you guys are amazing, first of all, and your journeys have been amazing. But I have some questions for you as well. Did you guys ever see a show, I think it was originally a TED Talk, or no, it wasn't. It was a lecture series from a university back east called The Last Lecture. Are the two of you familiar with that? Does that?
I've heard of it. I think I read a book.
There was a book. So this is where I think it's important to kind of talk a little bit about. You are both elders. I mean, all three of us are. You are sages in your worlds. You are men of constantly trying to grow as human beings. Men who are constantly trying to give to others. Both of you have made your lives about that. Why? Wow, I just got 3 Jewish guys to be quiet at one time. So,
Go for it now.
Why?
Well, there is the old joke: if you have one Jew, you have a philosopher. If 2, you have an argument. If you have 3, you have chaos.
And then you got 4 rabbis, 5 synagogues, and six interpretations just with 2 of them. So yeah.
Let me say, sometimes the last person to learn who you are is you. And the challenge in your life is your willingness to embrace who you are in the full self that it takes all of your willingness to approach. Jung calls it everybody has a shadow side, and you avoid your shadow side, and that becomes your teacher for the rest of your life. What you avoid, as it's the elephant in the room. For me, I felt the presence of God in my life when I was very, very young, and had no way to interpret what that experience was. Because of circumstance, I spent a lot of time in my life trying to fit in, and was profoundly successful in that, and found myself as president or heads of an organization with whom I had no friends, because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to feel as part of a group, because we moved so much and because of the economic struggles that my family had. It took me a long time to reconcile that, why we are here in this lifetime. I just to go backward just for a second. I won't be long-winded on this, but Moses lives the first 40 years of his life in the Pharaoh's palace and is a son of the Pharaoh. The next 40 years, he slays a taskmaster and he's on the run. He's in Midian. It's when he turns 80 that Moses meets the burning bush and realizes he has yet a calling in his life. I have lived long enough to meet that bush and to have that conversation and the responsibility inherent to it.
So, Noah, do you mind me asking, how old are you?
Well, I'll share something with you. A number of years back, PBS did an evening with Noah Benshea and the Journey to Greatness. Played in about 150 cities. And one time it was playing in 20-minute segments so they could do fundraisers between my presentation. And it was playing down in Palm Springs. And there was a guy named Fred Siegel who owned all the Fred Siegel stores, an icon in the design world, dressed Elvis and the Beatles, and was friends with the Dalai Lama and Mikhail Gorbachev. And I know this because he wanted me to write a book. So I wrote a book with Mikhail Gorbachev and the Dalai Lama at one time and with Fred Siegel. And Fred, after he saw me in the show, and he said, Noah, they asked you on the show how old you are. He said, never answer that question. This is how you answer it. Tell them I'm a 3,000-year-old teacher temporarily inhabiting the body of a younger man.
That works. I just tell people that I'm old enough to know what to do, and not too old and still young enough to not get tired doing it, so I can still live life fully. And I think I'm looking really good for 97. But you've lived life is the point, and you've gotten to this place. But you also were doing it long when you were a much younger man.
Yeah,
a much younger man.
I've been writing for 60 years.
And you said that your purpose is to help others, to bring strength to others, to guide. Why do that? Why write Jacob the Baker? And similarly, Shaun, why? I mean, yours is a little bit clearer with the pain as well, but why choose to help others?
I'll share this with you, my friend, to your question. When I first knew that I was called to be a poet philosopher, and I said to people, well, the one thing you can be sure that poets don't sell out. There's no one buying, but there was things that were happening that you had no anticipating could be happening. So when I first began writing, I didn't have any vision that at some point down the road that Jeff Brotman, the chairman of Costco, would tell me, Noah, I paid retail for Jacob the Baker and bring it to Howard Schultz, the chairman of Starbucks. And Starbucks would say, could we take the quotes of Jacob the Baker and put them on 30 million Starbucks coffee cups?
Wow.
Or that hospital chain said, could we take quotes from Jacob the Baker and put them on patient trays? And then Costco and Cisco came out and said, could we put them on sugar packets and call it Sugar for the Soul? And there were 275 million sugar packets with quotes from Jacob the Baker and Noah Benshea out there. Or the Costco would put a line of bread from Jacob the Baker in quotes, and they would sell 900,000 loaves in 3 weeks. This too, I didn't anticipate happening in my life.
So you committed to the wave of doing it without even necessarily knowing.
Oh, my friend. I'll share something with you, which is the clearest light on this. When I was in my early 30s, and I was invited to be a fellow at a very famous international think tank in Santa Barbara, a person who was head of the Reform Jewish Movement's publishing arm came to see me. He had been a student in the class I taught at UCLA. And he said, I want to do an interview book with you with all the things you said when you were in your 20s. I said, great, Aaron, I'm a little bit busy right now. I have young children. And I had started a bread company because I thought it would be fun, just as a complete departure. And it didn't turn out to be fun. It turned out to be a success, which was a very different experience. So he wrote me a letter back, and another week he said, Noah, there's so many interview books. What about you do a book about a baker who's really a wise man? The people are always asking questions. I know this sounds like a fairy tale, but it's your life, and why don't you write it? I said, oh, sure, Aaron, sure. So he sent me a check for, let's just put this in perspective. I want you to have what you do for the right reasons. He sent me a check for $180. I bought a leather jacket. And then for 2 years, I wrote Jacob the Baker from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, because that was the only time I had. And when I finished the book, an agent got a hold of the book, and it was brought to the best publishers in New York. And the 3 major publishers in New York started cross-bidding, and it became a 6-figure deal. But it was a book I wrote for $180, and I still have the leather jacket that I got. So you do the right thing without anticipation, play the part, not the result in this lifetime. And the amazing sometimes can happen.
And that is a huge lesson that everyone needs to remember. You do the right thing, and everything is in the hands of God. The right things happen after you do the right things, and you commit to that. It's a beautiful lesson. Shaun?
Or you buy a leather jacket and stuff happens.
Is there any doubt how much I love this man?
Well,
it's like there's a line in Jacob the Baker where Jacob meets this guy and he says, it was like meeting an old friend for the first time. You know, that's Shaun and I have this connection. We so Shaun, yes, I should have bought the jacket in South Africa. I may have, for the $180 I might buy two.
Hey,
So
look, Shaun, you've been in the clothing business. Why don't you just make a Jacob the Baker leather jacket? You can make another version that's Jacob the Surfer jacket, and you can turn it into a whole other clothing company for yourself.
Yeah. Then I'll upset my vegan fans.
So, Shaun, look, Shaun, you've been very deeply affected by tragedy, and I know you started the surfing and with your dad, and it's funny when I was in Tel Aviv last week thinking about and seeing the guys kite surfing, I was thinking about you because it's so beautiful there in the Tel Aviv water. But why keep doing the journey that you're doing?
I'll tell you what, it helps me heal. I found that helping others helps you even more than it helps others. And you
Amen.
know, when I lost my son and so many people have had dreadful losses, um, I found that when I shared my story of my boy, when I shared my books, when I shared my perspective, when I share my method, and you can see there's always a group of people in the audience that have suffered like you've suffered. And it just gives them strength, it gives them hope, and it gives them purpose. And there's that sort of synergistic relationship that you can feel that energy flowing both ways. You know, there's this tribal connectivity that is very interesting. I did a talk at this famous Hawaiian school a number of years ago. It's called Kamehameha School. It's dedicated to preserving and protecting Hawaiian heritage and culture. You have to be of Hawaiian descent to go to this school. Amazing school. They've resurrected the Hawaiian language. It's beautiful. It's almost like a tale of Israel in a microcosm. So after I spoke in their chapel to about 4,000 students, 3 or 4,000 students, very large audience. And the chaplain said to the students, I want you to bow your heads and I want you to give Shaun your mana. Now, this is what Hawaiians call the life force, mana. And this was the sustenance. When the Jews were in the desert, you know, there's this connectivity that is so deep. And when I give my presentations, there's a connectivity between me and the audience that is just so wonderful and warm, and it has this fire, and it has this connectivity. You know, the fundamental problem, not just in business, but in the world today, is disengagement. This is a lack of connectivity with others. It's a lack of respect. It breeds anti-Semitism. It breeds unkindness. It breeds hatred. And Leo and I always discuss it. There's a three-part strategy for life. Be kind, be kind, be kind. How simple is that? And hey, Noah, be
yeah,
kind, be kind, be kind.
yeah, I remember the first time I shared this with Shaun. I said, we were talking about something. I said, Shaun, because he was granting me the deep thoughts and consciousness. And I said, Shaun, it's not that complicated. There's only three great truths. And he was like, Shaun, he was like totally attentive. I said, be kind, be kind, be kind.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
and it wasn't something like something Shaun agreed with. It was so intuitive to Shaun because he is kind, kind, kind. I always say to people when they're trying to, that they asked the Dalai Lama what his religion was. He said, "I'm a Buddhist, but my religion is kindness." You know, they asked the Abu Bakr, the first Islamic caliph, what he says, be kind, and the blessings of Allah will be on you. And Jacob the baker says, people of all faiths are of one faith, if their religion is kindness.
It's beautiful. Kindness has no state. Kindness has no religion. Um, but also, beyond that healing aspect, it also for me, it's a calling. And how did I come to this sort of realization that it was a calling? So, shortly before I lost my boy, I spoke to him over the phone 2 hours before. And I told you, he wrote this amazing essay, and he wrote these words, "The light shines ahead." In the essay, I went, wow, Luke, Matthew, his name in Hebrew means gift from God. I said, where did you write this? Where did you get the essay from? He said, Dad, I wrote it today for English class. It was about riding inside the tube, inside the spinning tunnel of water, the most extreme moment and the best moment and the most exhilarating moment in surfing. And when you're inside the spinning barrel and it gets dark and you think that the wave is going to actually eat you up, you're aiming for this light that shines ahead. So when I lost my boy, I found the essay that he wrote with the words, and I was completely despairing. I'd lost my faith. I thought God had deserted me, and I was in a hospital with my wife, who had to be hospitalized after this tragedy. And this was had to be about a month afterwards. And a friend walked into the room, and he said, "Hey, I've got a message from Matthew." And one bolt of lightning hit that hospital out of a clear sky. There wasn't even one cloud in the whole sky, and shook that hospital to its foundation. One bolt of lightning, eh? And he said the message was that Matthew's okay. He wants to say sorry. It was an accident. Anyway, this person was at a higher spiritual plane than most people. So anyway, so that was sort of a bit of a jolt in my consciousness. I'm going, he wrote "The light shines ahead." One bolt of lightning hits a hospital out of a clear sky. How's that even possible? So then I would go during the day, I would sit in my old shul, Temple David, in Durban, where I had my bar mitzvah. And I'd sit there, and right above the ark in every shul, it's got that lamp, the Ner Tamid, and I'd sit there and I'd look at that above the Torah, and I'd think and I'd think and I'd think. And I go, there's a connection here that's it's sort of healing me internally, but I don't know what's happening. So then a friend of mine who kept phoning me every day, and he said, "Hey, Shaun, I want to take you surfing. Shaun, I want to take you surfing." And I went, no. You know what fires up surfers? It's called stoke. You get stoked. It's like this fire that's burning inside you. And I said, no, I'm not going surfing. He kept phoning me, and eventually I relented, and I said, okay, I'll go surfing with you. And he said, I'm taking you to a break you've never surfed before. So we drove up the coast, and we're on the east coast of Africa. So as I'm walking down to this break, the waves are perfect, 3 to 4 feet. And this African sun is just boiling up out of the ocean. I mean, it's like a fire. And I feel the warmth of the sun. And as I'm walking down to the water for the first time after I lost my boy, I start crying. And I dive in to paddle out. And the first wave hits me in the face, and it washes my tears away. It was the most amazing sensation. And I paddled further out, and I was still crying. And the next wave washed over me and washed my tears away. And the next wave washed over me. And I could feel Matthew was right there with me. And I caught my first wave, and I could feel he was there. And I caught my next wave, and I could feel he was there. And I caught my next. And it was just this emotional experience of connectivity to my son, and then to the bigger world, to God. And then I paddled out to my friend. And I said, Graham, what's the name of this wave? Now, every single surfing spot in the world has a different name. I said, what's the name of this break? He said, Shaun, it's called Sunrise. So for me, that put everything together and was a moment for me that I could go on now with a new life. Because the puzzle pieces had come together and given me a richer understanding of life. And that was, for me, an epiphany and my movement forward.
It's you talk
When
about the
my
sunrise
friend, when Shaun was talking, and the the intimacy that we share is sincere, and yet I have never heard this story before. But when you were telling it, I had a friend of mine who was a doctor here in Santa Barbara who, toward the end of his life, he needed to be hospitalized or taken care of, and his partner, she didn't want to take care of him. And I saw him at the hospital in his home, and I said, "How are you doing? How are you bearing up?" And he said, "I have been washed by my tears. I have been washed by my tears." And when you said this, Shaun, I thought of this, and I thought that um, that uh, this this notion of the feeling like you're in the dark. No one has ever found their way who has not felt lost. There's no one who's ever been in the light who has not found himself at some point in the dark. It's just part of how it works. And when you asked earlier about doing what Shaun and I have been doing for a long time, I thought about the Taoist masters who they asked, "How can you ride your horses without holding on?" And they said, "Ride the horse in the direction it is going." And I thought that Shaun and I have been riding our horse in the direction it's been going for a very, very long time. And if you dare to be at one with your horse, at one with your wave, there is no handlebars on a surfboard. When you're on a surfboard, you are daring to ride, and the only seat belt you have is finding your balance. And that's what we can do in this lifetime in the face of waves that seem insurmountable, in the face of loss that seems insurmountable.
So now I want to follow that for a moment, okay?
Sure.
First of all, I don't know if either of you are aware, the Maccabiah in our tradition, there's an ancient history of having a tear collector, which is a vial that has a little tiny, like very tiny spoon to collect your tears so that you can go to the healing. For the sake of time, I want to be brief in this. People go through darkness. And the Jewish tradition says that everything is a decision between faith and fear. I believe that wholeheartedly. The more fear, the less faith. The more faith, the less fear. They cannot exist in the same time, at the same moment. But you are both healers in your own ways, and through your writings and through your speakings. People in pain. There's someone right now who's listening to this, who is, or who will listen to this, who is ensconced in fear, not faith, who've cut off their passion, who are not being present, who are not letting the tears wash over themselves, who are not riding the horse the way the horse needs to go, who are not writing little pieces of paper that go into rolls. What can they do? Briefly, what can they do?
Okay, so I can tell you what worked for me. So reconnect with your faith, whatever faith you might have, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, reconnect with your faith. Maybe it's going to see a rabbi or to seeing a minister or priest, but reconnect with your faith. That really seemed to help me. Walk out and step out into nature. I found that was super important. For me, it was like paddling out into the water. For someone, it might be a walk through a forest. But, when you're out there in nature, you have this feeling of being humbled and being in this broader space under this like horizon or this sort of dome of God. It's a beautiful feeling to get out in the nature. And then do something worthy that if it's a loss of a parent, if it's a loss of a child, do something worthy in celebration of that person to keep their memory alive. For me, it was writing books. I made a beautiful film called Busting Down the Door. All in the year after I lost my son, I found that work took my mind off the darkness and made me sort of re-enter the world. So those have been those sort of aspects have been very useful for me. And then connect up with a professional, super important, whether it's psychologist, psychiatrist, and then connect up with others and ask them for help. Um, Connecting with friends, maintaining and rebuilding those relationships, because everyone around you feels the pain as well and wants to help you. But if you shut the door, it's a cycle of depression. And then also, which was super important, and that is unequivocal, absolute forgiveness for oneself and for anyone around that might be associated with the loss. Because I found that if you can't forgive, you carry this baggage on your back and you get caught in this downward spiral of despair. And then for me also helped was acceptance. This is super hard to accept that loss and not get involved in the world of what is, what if, what could have, would have, that spinning cycle of despair. And it's really hard, when you've lost someone, to just accept that, you're never going to be able to put your arms around them and hug them and kiss them. But it's hard, and you have to accept it. What is, not what if. What is, not what if. What is, not what if. And those are the things that have helped me. But everyone's journey on that dark road is different. But that's
And it's a different dark road. Yours is, there's the journey of loss, and you're dealing with the healing. And Shaun, I don't know how familiar you are with teachings and works of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, but it's certainly something you might want to explore. Rabbi Nachman teaches that before even saying morning blessings, we were to go out and listen for an hour to the prayers of the plants and the animals because of nature. That's how we recover from healing. Your method, Noah. Again, briefly because of time.
I'm not.
My question is not about loss in your case, but what's the methodology Jacob recommends to someone who is stressed, anxious, scared? It's not even that they're healing; they're scared and worried. How does Jacob say? What does Jacob say to do about that?
Well, sometimes Noah needs Jacob as much as anybody needs Jacob. My shorthand is that put your faith, not your fears, in charge. But we
Amen.
live in a world where people can have 500 friends on Facebook and nobody to call at 3 o'clock in the morning when you worry about your own mortality, or a child whose life you can't fix, or a parent who's in a precarious situation. So a number of months ago, I did something I started in my life. In the middle of the night, I find myself taking my one hand to hold the three interior fingers, the other hand, and I say to myself, "You are not alone. I am holding your hand." And then I began to think of the names of people I knew who was going through a difficult time, and I said their name, and I said, "I want you to know that I am holding your hand in the night." And then I began to think that there were all these people out there who I didn't know, and I didn't know their names, and it didn't matter because God knew their name. And all I wanted them to know is that I am holding your hand in the night. And then I reminded myself that every time in the middle of the night, when I held the hand of someone I did not know, that it was my own hand that I was holding, that in being loving and caring for people who were going through difficult things that you could not imagine, it was the best poultice one could offer to oneself, and to be in a state of presence with yourself and to hold your hand in the night and know you're holding the hand of a lot of other people who also need to have their hand simply held in the night.
Amen.
We are all alone, but we are all alone together.
Amen. It's extremely beautiful, and
So, Rabbi,
I will tell you that Noah, I'm actually, I sleep about 2 hours a night because I do a lot of writing, and I do a daily email other than Shabbos and on Chagim, on festivals, about what's really going on in Israel, and I can't write it till 3 a.m. because Israel's 10 hours ahead. So if you ever want to hold a hand physically, spiritually, in conversation or anything else, you can always call me at 3 a.m. too.
Brother, no, the call is in, and my hand is holding yours.
Always, and amen to that. So
Rabbi, just before we go on this, I would encourage anyone that's listening, that's going through a tough time, is write your code. You can go to my website, download the worksheet. It's absolutely free, ShaunTomson.com.
And it's
And
fabulous.
spend 15 minutes, 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. And then if you're a family, it's wonderful for everyone to do it together. And then once they've written it, is they share it, they read it to one another. But it's a really amazing, liberating process. So hundreds of thousands of people do it, and they love it. And it is just it's so helpful, and it can create this fundamental transformational mind shift really quickly. It can give people hope. It can give people purpose.
You just said it right there, hope and purpose. That is an answer, and faith over fear. And whether we're healing from a dark place, whether we are in our own anxieties or worries, I think two of the gifts that the two of you give the world are write down your codes, your affirmations, your I wills, and let your hand be held while you hold others. So we're going to come back.
Chazak, v'ni chazek, be strong, and be a source of strength
And
to
we
others,
will be
and you will be strengthened.
We will be strengthened, literally. So we're going to exit this podcast section and go back to the radio for the final segment with the two of you as guests as we return right back to the radio and podcast of the Rabbi's Table today with the Sage and the Surfer, because we've given Surfer first credit. So, but the Sage and the Surfer and the Sage here at the Rabbi's Table. One of the greatest places that I know of to go to, whether it's for a day, a week, or even a little longer, is a vacation up in Reno, specifically at the Atlantis Resort and Casino in Reno. It's amazing up there, and it's a little gem of Reno that is often just ignored. I go up there with my family. There's wintertime skiing. There's summertime at the Lake Tahoe. And the Atlantis Resort and Casino is an amazing place to stay. Not only are the rooms beautiful, amazing views, but some of the restaurants are the best restaurants in the country, the Napa Bistro, different places that you can eat. There's an indoor pool. So you can go skiing in the morning and then go swimming in the afternoon. I really want to recommend to you to check out the Atlantis Resort. It's at atlantiscasino.com. That's atlantiscasino.com, ATLANTIS casino.com. It's up in Reno. I promise you, and I've been there, I promise you, you're going to have an amazing time. You won't be able to wait till you get back. Go visit it. Go see Reno. It's the greatest little city in the world. Go have some fun at the Atlantis. Welcome back to the Rabbi's Table, this special episode with the Surfer and the Sage and the Surfer, Noah Benshea and Shaun Tomson. Shaun, you were just talking about the loss with your son. And in the podcast segment, we talked some more about that and about loss and anxiety, pain and healing. And one of the many reasons to listen to this on the podcast, to go to the Rabbi's Table and do that. But I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of move things forward with you to share some of your wisdom, not just your stories. So lightning round, so to speak. Does someone have to go through pain, the dark night of the soul, as our friend Robert Bly used to call it as well? Do you have to go through pain and darkness to achieve the joy and wisdom that comes to many people afterwards? Yes or no? Shaun?
I would say yes.
No?
No, I would say yes. It gives you this knowledge, but at a terrible price.
Noah? You?
Ecclesiastes. There is no life without seasons. There are seasons in every life.
Okay.
And I would remind people that in every life you will live many lives. A friend of mine whose daughter passed in a swimming accident, at the funeral, her sister said to me, "Noah, do you believe in reincarnation?" And I said, "I do. I just don't think you have to die to be reincarnated."
Amen. Amen to that. And Shaun, we have a mutual friend. No, I don't know if you know our mutual friend, Rabbi Arthur Gross Schaefer, who's in Santa Barbara.
I love that.
I knew Arthur long before Shaun did. We've been friends for a long time.
And Arthur actually is a witness on my ketubah and used to stay at my house. And is a real wonderful man, and who had suffered also a tragedy and
Terrible.
And has had the tragedy of his son's death. They've also done amazing work for peace. And yet, to say that we need to go through the pain? Can we not learn in any other way than being burned by the fire to temper ourselves, our sword?
I think we can learn without being burned by the fire, but when you have this dreadful loss, and of course I would not wish it on anyone, it does give you a different viewpoint.
Sure. No, agreed. And certainly if you look
your
through
life and about the life of others, it just it changes. People say,
okay, but Shaun,
how do you deal with it?
Shaun, I want to move forward there. Yes, it does, just like someone going through addiction does, and going through recovery. But do we need to have it? Because I'm going to ask you both another question with this right now.
Well, let me just play. I'll take the other question, but let me just in very short. If God will give you years, God will give you loss.
Okay. Then I'm going to ask a two-part question to you both, and I really want very brief answers. We needed the Holocaust. Are you both saying we needed the Holocaust to get the state of Israel, and we needed October 7th to get Jews around the world to start to unite? Because this show does have a political bent to it, and I really want to talk with you both about this.
Heavens knows. October 7th and the Holocaust were the acts of evil on this planet, profound evil beyond understanding. Fact. You cannot bring any sense of requirement for the death of 1 million children in Poland as an act of the Holocaust as something that was required for the development of Eretz Israel. It was straight ahead evil. There is evil in the world. And our challenge is to how we stand up in the face of it.
So I know I agree with you 100%. Okay, just so you know what we stand. The three of us are all men who are committed to peace and to healing. Agreed?
Absolutely.
And we've dedicated our lives to that. All true?
Correct.
So I'm going to ask the question that is so hard, and let me put in a quick framework. On October 8th of 2023, every person's head, and certainly every Jew's head, imploded. And every Jew's head who had been walking around talking about we need a two-state solution and Palestinian, and we know historically there's no such thing as Palestine even. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But all those people, their heads imploded. They couldn't believe what Hamas did. Yet Hamas, their charter, they're very clear in their charter since 1988, the covenant of 1988, exactly what they wanted to do. There's been no bones about this. But I will tell you, and this is the reason I write an email every night, by December 8th, it was out of the consciousness of 95% of non-Orthodox Jews. And by January 8th of 2024, it was out of the consciousness of 90% of non-Orthodox rabbis. If you're Orthodox, you're praying every morning, we talk about it. If you're conservative or reform, it's out of the consciousness, not being discussed. And now we're going through what we're going through with Iran. And let's be clear, Iran and the Quran, I don't know how much either of you have actually studied the Quran, and while I love the works of Rumi, especially Coleman Barks' translations, and I love so many different things in that tradition, the Quran is very clear about what it wants to do with all kafar, with any infidel, Jew, Christian, or non-practicing Muslim. We believe in peace. The three of us have dedicated and continue to dedicate our lives to healing, kindness, and peace. Compassion and empathy. Agreed?
Absolutely.
Right?
Well,
what do you do with Hamas? Tell me what to do. What is Jacob the surfer? I'm going to combine the two of you. What is Jacob the surfer in a very, very brief minute? I know this is a big question. Okay, what does Jacob the surfer want to do with Iran and Hamas?
Iran and Hamas are outside of above my pay grade. I have this to say to your question. One, my son is a PhD and is an Islamic scholar who's written about the Quran for the Oxford University Press. He reminds me that in the early surahs in the Quran, it asks for peace. It's in the latter surahs when Muhammad gained strength that they were coming on the other side of the issue. My feeling is I'm more aligned with Golda Meir on this, that if the Palestinians put down their guns, there would be peace. If the Israelis put down their guns, there'd be no Israel. Those are the facts.
100% amen.
Those are the facts on the ground right now. That's what with a sense of brevity, that's what I might say to your question.
But what does well? Okay, first, Shaun, briefly your answer to this. What do we do about what's going on there? Where do we side? Do we negotiate with Iran, knowing that they are trying to build more nuclear weapons? Do we negotiate with Hamas, knowing that they're building tunnels? Hezbollah, which wants all three of us and everyone we know dead? Shaun, what does Jacob the Surfer do?
For me, the fundamental problem is acceptance. Acceptance that Israel has a 3,000-year-old connection to the land, that it's a state, it's a country. Without that acceptance, it's going to be continual war. So how do you inculcate this concept of acceptance, respect, and compromise and cooperation? I call it the ARC concept: acceptance, reconciliation, compromise. When I went to Israel shortly after October 7, well, it was 4 months after October 7, to do a memorial for 27 surfers that had been murdered by Hamas. And I went to a number of the Gaza envelope towns. I went to Be'eri and I went to Kafar, and I met young people whose parents had been killed, parents whose children had been killed, kidnapped. I met a couple of kidnapped victims. And they, these were the most liberal Jews in Israel, the kibbutzniks. These were people, every morning they opened the gates. The Palestinian community.
Shaun, Shaun, because of time, I really want to focus on this.
Okay.
Just an answer. We all have the experience. What do you, Jacob the Surfer, should we accept Iran? Should we negotiate with them? Should we negotiate with Hamas, who they are committed to not having kindness with us? How do we meet those who are committed to our destruction with kindness? Maybe that's the question for a 30-second answer. Shaun, starting with you. How do we confront those who want to destroy us with kindness and not die in the process?
Well,
Shaun, let me if Shaun, if I might, not to speak over you, but to give you one more moment. I have a line from Jacob the Baker, and it gets to the point here. Be cautious of people who confuse kindness with weakness.
Amen. And there's nothing as gentle as real strength, and nothing as strong as real gentleness. And I don't remember where I heard that, and I may have heard that in your book first. So
why not?
Shaun?
So let me give you a tiny little story here.
No. We don't have time. I'm sorry. We don't have the time for the stories. An answer. I'm pegging you down on this. Commit to an answer.
The answer is to negotiate, but from a position of overwhelming strength.
Okay. So, and I say this because I know enough about you, and you guys have expressed enough, and I think you know enough about me to know that, to not be surprised that I've cried every day since October 7th. Not just for what's happened to Jews and Israelis, but for what we've been forced to do. And to use a Golda Meir quote, Noah, she also said, someday we may be able to forgive you for killing our children. We will never be able to forgive you for making us kill yours. And that you two both have an international reputation as being kind, gentle men. And if I'm hearing you correctly, kindness and strength together. Yes?
Absolutely.
Okay. Very quickly, we're almost at the end of this segment, and I have a question I ask everyone. One word, literally, one word or phrase, and this comes from that idea that I remember when I saw the last lecture a college professor would ever give in his life, and they had this, and one guy was his last lecture. One word, one phrase that defines the soul of each of you, that defines the soul of Noah ben Yetta, of Noah Benshea. One word, starting with you, Noah. One word or phrase that defines your neshama, your soul, who you are, why you are, how you are, and what you leave and give to the world.
Said that of all the Jews who ever lived at one time, they could not pronounce the name of God. Anything you say about the truth is a lie. I cannot capture my neshama in a word or a phrase.
Okay. Shaun?
Hope.
Hope.
And the statement from me is, I will always paddle back out.
And In some ways, Noah, the name of God, the Yud-Keh Vav-Keh, is meant to be explored. It's the opening. That one word is the opening into the universe, because everything is more than just, our souls are so big, and the two of you, your souls are really so beautiful in so many ways, and you give gifts to the world. I don't know that either of you really understand or know. I don't know that anyone can know or recognize how big the gifts are that they give, and the two of you not only touch the lives of the people you know, but so many others that they then touch. And for that, I thank you both. Noah, you can be reached, or people can follow you on...
If they want to, you can go to Noah at noahbenshea.com to send that, or you can see me. You can find me on Facebook.
noahbenshea.com. Shaun, your the web address?
ShaunTomson.com. Download your code worksheet.
There you go, ShaunTomson.com. Tomson, and it's SHAUN. And you can also sit and look up the code. Look up Jacob the Baker.
See jacobthebaker.com for about the film.
Jacobthebaker.com. The film's amazing. And gentlemen, I want to thank you truly from the bottom of my neshama, my soul. You were both a gift in so many ways, for Jacob the Baker, Jacob the Surfer, and just who you guys are. Thank you for sitting at the rabbi's table and sharing this time together, and just for who you are. Truly, truly. May you and your family always be blessed. Hazak Baruch. Be strong and be blessed. If you like what you're seeing and hearing at the rabbi's table, I invite you to subscribe and to follow us on any of your podcast mediums, Spotify, iHeart, Apple, whatever it is. You can just follow us. You'll get all the latest information, special information from us, special segments of podcasts. You can also go to pound 250. You can go on your cell phone, dial pound 250. When the recording comes up, say, find my podcast. It will ask you what podcast, say the rabbi's table. And from then on, you will always get our podcast, our show, directly to your phone. So I invite you to sit with me, with our guests, with the different icons, and join us by being part of the podcast, part of the group, part of the community at the rabbi's table. So we're here for the last part of the rabbi's table, of the sort of dessert wine, so to speak. After having an amazing time and session with the surfer and the sage, the surfer, Shaun Tomson, the sage, Noah Benshea, although I would suggest they're both really great sages, and learning of kindness and strength and seeing God in every place. We discussed briefly the idea of Rabbi Nachman that we should go out into the morning, every morning, and listen to the sound of the birds and the animals. Listen to the sound of God before we even say our morning prayers. There's a great story that a child was very smart, 10-year-old child, very, very smart. Sent him to college. And the older kids, the 20-year-olds, they made fun of him. And one of them said, you know what, you're so smart. I'll give you $1 if you can tell me where God is. You can show me where God is. And the kid looked at him and he said, I'll give you $10 if you can show me where God isn't. Whether it is the horrific pain that people feel, as Shaun did with his loss, the different challenges as Noah has with his loss, the different anxieties and fears that we all have in one way or another, we need to find God in there. In order to do that, we need to receive, in Hebrew the word lakabel, we need to receive God's presence in our lives by listening to nature, by viewing each other, by opening our hands, knowing that God is everywhere and everything, and that, again, if you call it God, life, Christ, the universe, I don't care. But surrendering ourselves to life, to the journey of life, to allowing ourselves to surrender to the passion, joy, pain, fear, hope that we find in life in every moment. That if we do that, we will find ourselves surfing through life. We'll find ourselves being like Jacob the Baker. And we'll find out who we really are in our authentic selves. We'll experience life with joy, with real depth, with passion, with compassion, and with kindness. Please be kind this week and all weeks. We have some amazing guests. Next week, I believe we have Eric Metaxas. And I invite you to Chazak Baruch. Be strong. Be blessed. And I'll see you next week here at the Rabbi's Table.